You ever wonder how to capture the raw, human energy of a classic song and make it your own? Well, in today's video, I'm diving deep into a creative hack that lets you extract the soul out of any hit song using Logic Pro and one free tool, all without ever needing to actually pick up an instrument. From the most accurate way to convert audio to MIDI to crafting a groove that just breathes with life, we'll move step by step to show how to transform an MP3 or CD rip into the backbone of your next hit, all without getting sued. So stick around and see how easy it can be to borrow that magic spark and make your tracks stand out. Let's get started. Okay, so to start things off, I'm just going to add a fresh audio track in Logic Pro, and I'm going to go up to my control bar and set my tempo mode to auto. Next, I'm just going to show my global tracks by clicking here, and I'm going to drag and drop in my hit commercial song, which was ripped straight from a CD. CDs are at 44.1K, but my project sample rate is at 48 kilohertz. So I just click convert file and Logic analyzes it and changes the sample rate. And it also changes the tempo of the whole track to follow that of the audio file. Now I just click show to make sure that the downbeat is in the right spot. I'll scroll to a part in the song where the drums really kick in, hit command and zoom in on that area. These faint orange lines in the background signify the subdivisions and the downbeats, and they all look pretty good. So I'll just close this. Now, judging from this tempo map, I'm going to say that this was not recorded to a click track and that the drummer was just so good that he could carry the song with as much or as little variation as he wanted. Now, this song was recorded in the 90s when they didn't have Beat Detective or things like that. So even if bands used click tracks, they still relied on the feel of the drummer to really carry the music. That's why I love using older tracks like this, because everything's not perfectly aligned to the grid like a lot of it was in the 2000s and even up until today. Now, even though this is supposed to be an educational video, I can't play this song back because I'm not Rick Beato and I don't have a copyright lawyer on speed dial. Not that I think he should need one either. After all, it's the crab people at the AI companies who are currently steamrolling over a century's worth of copyright law, asking for forgiveness because they know they would never be granted permission. However, given our facade of a judicial and legislative process, it's highly doubtful that they will ever pay any consequences whatsoever. If you think I'm being hyperbolic, then just Google Shira Perlmutter and her story. Still, leave it to the labels to go after the YouTubers who are basically advertising their entire discography for free.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for them.
Not that anyone should be surprised. The labels haven't made a good decision since the days of Tower Records. So I'd expect nothing less. Anyways, let's get back to this creative little journey that we're on. So I'm going to right click on my region and head down to processing, stem splitter, and I'm just taking the drums. So that's the only one that I have selected. I'll hit apply, and it's going to take some time for Logic to analyze. So now I can just get rid of the other track, but I'm just going to hide it instead. So I hit H, brings up my hide button, and hit H again, and it's gone. Now I'm not going to pull from the full song. I'm just going to go to a section that I was interested in. So I can select it with my marquee tool, hit Option U, and that loops it up. Good luck guessing the song. If you do get it right in the comments, then I'll send you like 1,000,000,000,000,000 trillion ethereal well wishes. How's that? Now, as I've said in the past, stem splitters have some serious side effects. I mean, just listen to the cymbals. But the groove is just breathing with life. You can really feel the drummer still coming through the speakers. Plus, I could never play like this in real life. Drums is like my 5th instrument, and that human spark is what I'm really after. Okay, moving on. So basically what we've accomplished is we have a nice tempo squared away. A song can really be destroyed if its energy isn't transferred into an audio recording. obviously. And of course, a good amount of that comes from tempo. However, bands can spend a lot of time in the studio sorting that out before they find something that really resonates with them. So it's nice to be able to borrow that essence with these modern tools. Now, we can't use this stem in an actual production. Not necessarily because there's just too many side effects, but you would also run into copyright issues if anyone were to notice. That would be the little P surrounded by a circle, which protects the audio recording itself. And believe it or not, also the engineering. So what we're going to do is convert this stem again into individual kit elements, convert those to MIDI, and then trigger whatever drum samples we want, which I'll get into later. If these were already separate kick, tom, and snare channels, then I could just go up to track and scroll down to replace or double drum track. And this would do a pretty good job of converting the audio to MIDI. And then it would place a MIDI region underneath my audio region. However, when you do this on a stem, it doesn't really provide good results. It just gives you one note of MIDI and a lot of mistriggering, a lot of misfires. So it's a lot to sort through and it's not worth your time. No fun. Luckily, there's a bunch of different ways that we can do this. They just all require a little bit of work. Technically, we could use stock tools inside of Logic, like duplicating the audio region and applying different EQ and gating techniques on each different channel. But take it from me, that doesn't provide the best results either. Oddly enough, just a few hours ago, while I was preparing for this video, this came out on the market. It's by Waves and it's a intelligent drum replacer. It kind of looks like other triggering plugins that have been available for years. So I'm actually going to do a deep dive on this plugin in a separate video and see what the deal is. But I was really hoping that I would read something about cymbal and hi-hat replacement because those are notoriously tough to trigger. And from what I've read so far, it doesn't mention it at all. But anyways, I'm going to look at this later. And then there's online things like SampLab, which do a decent job. And they can sometimes get the hi-hat or crash in the ballpark, but it still needs work. And I believe you're limited to 10 seconds of audio for free. So for a whole song, you would have to split it up into 10-second segments and just go about it like that. And then you're still left with a bunch of refining to do after you download the MIDI. So you could go down your own rabbit hole trying to figure out which tool is best. But the good news is that I did a lot of the legwork for you and I found what I think is actually the best option, and it's absolutely free. And this is good old Steven Slate Trigger 2 free version. You just got to head over to stevenslatedrums.com, create an account, and you can grab it. I know there's been some compatibility issues with their installation hub, so you can download an offline installer if you're on like the latest version of Sequoia. Hopefully they get around to fixing that soon. Anyways, once you have that installed, you just got to do a little setup in Logic before you can load up the plugin. Hey, just a quick pause to say I hope you're enjoying the video and that the best thing you can do to help my channel grow would be to like this video and subscribe to Como Music Creation. The next best thing you can do is send me $1 through the link on my homepage so that I can bring you more content like this faster. Thank you very much. I won't bother you again. Let's get back to the video. I'm going to duplicate my stem track and the audio region as well. I'm going to call one kick and the next one snare, and I'll even add some little icons for you. Boom and boom. Next, I have to make 2 buses and send each of the tracks to both of them. And I'll put these pre-fader, so I'm sending the full amount of signal. Now I call bus 1 kick and bus 2 snare, and I'm going to turn my sends on faders to on. And starting with the kick drum, I'm going to click on the orange send, turn on independent pan, and I'm going to pan this all the way to the left. Then on the snare drum, I do the same thing, but I pan it all the way to the right. And I do the reverse for bus 2. Independent pan, kick to the right, independent pan, snare to the left. Now I can turn this off. And now I can load up 2 instances of trigger. Go to my settings and make sure that my directory is all set. Go to browser and load up my kick sample. Now just focusing in on that kick drum. I'm going to add an EQ to the audio channel. And on this, I'm going to take a low pass filter and I'm going to put it all the way down to 150 Hertz and a steep slope. And that's great. I can pretty much only hear the kick drum at that point. Now on the snare track, I'm going to put a channel EQ as well, but this one I'm putting a high pass filter up to, let's say, 163. And a low pass filter all the way down to like 300. And then I can see that the snare drum is really poking through around 280, 270. So I'm going to add a tight bell curve and just pump that up. Because I can still hear that kick drum in the background. But as long as the snare drum is a lot louder, I don't need a gate to get involved in this. So I go back to the trigger plugin on the snare track and I put a snare drum on it. Okay, so we have our kick and our snare, and let's focus in on the kick trigger. Where it says input, on the left side, this is going to be the signal being fed from my kick track, and on the right side, that's going to be the signal from my snare track. Then I put suppress all the way up to 100%, so everything coming from the snare track on the right side is being suppressed. That's how the trigger plugin operates. So let's listen to that. And as you can see, all those red lines, that's where the snare drum would be triggering, but it's being ignored right now. And the kick drum, I really don't have to do much work on other than that. The snare drum is usually a little bit more difficult. I can use my mix knob to hear some of the original track. Yeah, it's triggering some of the kick drum, so I turn the detail up to ignore it a little bit. Okay, I think I got it in a pretty good spot. Now, if I were doing the whole song, I would probably have to automate some of these parameters, but today's just a little creative experiment. So, however, if I were to do that, I would just select the snare drum bus and click on the automation to get it to show up in the main window. Then I hit A for automation, then click and scroll down to trigger 2, and here's all the parameters inside of trigger 2. Then I look for things like detail, sensitivity, retrigger, and I can automate those. Then I think I want to take some of the dynamics out of my snare drum, so I go to view curves, and then I can just change the dynamics to like half of what they are. Let's try that. Maybe 60%. Cool, so if this was the paid version of Trigger, then I could drag my MIDI onto the track. However, that's locked in the free version. So what you can do is just export the buses. So I just select my buses, go to File, Export, and 2 tracks as audio files. Now I can just drag and drop them into Logic and just cut them up. And now I can go up to track and replace or double drum track. Choose the instrument. This one is kick. And my trigger note on the piano roll is C1. Set my threshold so anything above this threshold is going to trigger a note. And since I don't have to worry about bleed, the threshold isn't as important because there's just a kick on this track. And then now I finally have a MIDI kick. Do the same thing with the snare. Snare drum, threshold, trigger note is D1. Okay. Then I go up to here and I make sure that drag is set to overlap. And now I can drag my snare drum track on top of my MIDI, select those, and then in my secondary tool, choose join. And now I can just glue them together by hitting Option and join. Get rid of this. And now over in my library, I can choose from this list of drum kits and open up my piano roll, and boom, there they all are. Let's play that along with the original track. And as you can hear, it's a nice tight representation of what the real drummer was doing. Now, I can do the same thing for the toms and just use one of these instances of trigger to really hone in on like this tom fill, for instance. So I'll do that real quick, and then we'll come back and get into what we're gonna do about the hi-hats and the crashes. Yeah, my Kali Audio HP1 headphones just showed up. These just came out on the market, and I will be using them as my sole headphones for the next few weeks. So look for a review on these coming up. They definitely have a way of shutting the world off. Anyways, more on that later. Now for the hi-hat and the cymbals, I've yet to find a technology that can really hone in on those and glue them to the rest of the performance. They're usually a little out of whack if they trigger at all. Superior Drummer 3 has been the closest thing I can find that can do it, but this is where you have to kind of let your creativity take over because it doesn't have to be a one-to-one carbon copy of the original performance. And the most expedient way that I can think of going about making a hi-hat pattern and some cymbals is to just make a pattern track, and it doesn't really matter what sounds I'm using right now. It'll make 32 steps. And I covered this in my Logic 101 video, if you haven't seen that. Okay, I think I found something that I can use. Bear with me. I'm going to convert this to MIDI, drag it to my other drum track, glue it together. I can get rid of this. Okay, we're getting somewhere. Now, of course, that sounds robotic. So what we can do, I'm just going to get rid of these. I'm just going to focus in on these first two bars. I'm going to select the notes that I want to work on, and then I go to Functions, MIDI Transform, and Humanize, and now I can slightly vary the timing, the velocity, as well as other parameters in this little menu. Now, where it says Position, I want to affect all of them, and I want to do plus or minus random positions. So, since I'm at 121 BPM, about 19 ticks equals about 10 milliseconds. Even a really tight drummer is going to be on or off in this ballpark. Then status, channel, pitch, all of these I want to leave as through to basically bypass them. And then velocity, I want to slightly randomize that as well, just to give a little bit of volume discrepancy between each note. So I'll leave that at 10. Length, I'm just going to leave it through because I don't want to change the length of the notes. And now I'll hit Operate. And as you can see, these slightly moved and now they're at different volumes. So I'll undo that. And you can see they're all right on the grid at the same volume. Redo, and they're slightly different. And now I'm going to move on to the next two bars and do slight variations or leave it the same. But you got to think like a drummer. Like if I'm going to hit this tom, I'm most likely not going to be hitting a cymbal at the same time or the hi-hat. And then after I'm done, I'm just going to listen to the overall groove to see if I'm rushing it or relaxing it too much. Maybe I want my hi-hat pattern to come in a little after the beat to give it some smoothness. Or alternatively, maybe you decide to put the overall hi-hat pattern a little bit before the beat to give the groove a sense of urgency. If the drummer is rushing things, then it's almost asking the rest of the band to play a little bit more urgently. And if the drummer is relaxing things a little bit, then he's telling the band to calm down. It's almost like you're acting as a conductor. So I'm just going to go through this and finish it off. If it still sounds too perfect or non-human, then I'm just going to go back to the humanize function and mess around with that more. Okay, so in the end, I didn't change things too much. I just finished off the hi-hat pattern, added some cymbals, and then I changed the overall sound of the kit to better suit what I was going after. I ended up choosing Portland for the drum kit. And you'll notice that in the original stem, there's a tambourine and a shaker panned hard left and right to fill it out. So of course I can definitely add this as well, and this is where I turn to Apple loops. So to show those, I just click up here. And in case you don't know, these are pre-recorded files that come free with Logic Pro, and you can drag and drop them into your project, and they will adjust themselves to whatever tempo that your project is set to. So to refine your search, you can browse by instrument. I'm looking for the shaker, so I click there. And I like that one, so I'm going to drag it in. That I think I only want on the second half, but I do want a tambourine playing throughout. So that one will complement it. Drag and drop that in, duplicate it. And I want to make sure that down here in the mixer, it's set to stereo pan. And I'm going to pan this all the way to the left, and then the shaker all the way to the right. And I choose stereo pan because otherwise I would just be turning one side down. But I want all of that stereo information to move. All right, now I'm just going to take them down in volume a little bit. Next up, if you don't have an idea for a bass line, then you can rip one from another song like we did with the drums, convert that to MIDI, and then change it enough so people don't know that it's a Beatles or a Jay-Z track. Or you can mess around more with Apple loops, load up a session player for ideas, which I covered in an earlier video, in case you don't know what those are. A link to that should be showing up right around here. However, that feature in YouTube is a little buggy, so I just might look crazy right now. Or maybe you want to write some top-line lyrics first and make them fit into your beat. Well, then you can experiment inside of Ace Studio and never even bother to warm up your voice. I covered that in this video if it's showing up. Or, believe it or not, you could pick up an actual instrument. In the end, it's a great time to be a lazy musician. However, when you're done writing and doing pre-production on your track, then it's always best to keep things as real as possible and inject yourself into your music. Because in the end, there's only one of you. Also, remember to please like if you do and subscribe to Como Music Creation. Thank you for watching until the end, and I will see you next time.